there YouTube, it has been a little while, but Arab Carthage here, and I'm going to bring you some Shogun 2 Total War online action. Let me get the battle pulled up here. We are going to be looking at a match between myself and a member of Clan Long. I've played several members of Clan Long, and all of them have seemed to enjoy playing the game rather missile heavy, which is not usually how I play. And back in the day when I was using lots of rush armies, this was... Cat was just trying to jump up and missed and then landed on the computer screen. So we had a near accident there. Come on, buddy. I think you need to just hop down for now, okay? Thanks. So in any case, yeah, every time I've played these guys, they've been very missile heavy, which is definitely one way you can play the game. And when I say missile heavy, I'm used to them bringing several bow warrior monks, several units of matchlocks, a not overly large contingent of longsword, but a solid contingent of longsword, and then a solid contingent of Yari-Ashigaru, and usually there's great guard units involved as well. So that's usually the type of army that I've seen from them. However, you can't completely stereotype people, but you can learn patterns sometimes. So I chose my army according to this pattern of what I was used to in the past when I faced them. So let me introduce you to the army I have. I have this unit right here, which is my Seeds of Doubt Naginata Warrior Monk Cav, so they're pretty cool. You can see their stats there. They've got high morale, solid attack, good melee defense, and they even have a good bonus versus Cav because I upgraded that. They also have the War Cry ability, which is very important for this build that I've brought. These Naginata Warrior Monk Cav also have the War Cry. The only difference between them and the other unit is their bonus versus Cav is 5 less, as I have not upgraded that yet. This is my Wind of Faith unit. So another fun unit. Naginata Warrior Monk Cav can be quite useful if upgraded properly. They can even defeat Great Guard in the right circumstances. So that's why I like them. They're a fairly versatile unit. And if you hammer an anvil, activating the War Cry ability at the same time, it is usually absolutely devastating to a line of lone swords. Even a frontal charge activating the War Cry can sometimes rout lone swords from the battlefield. So they're kind of like a mobile War Cry. Very interesting unit. I have 4 units of Yari-Ashigaru, 2 of them are right up front. I have 3 units of Bow Samurai, 2 units of Bow Warrior Monks, so I have 5 Skirmishing units. I've come quite heavy on Skirmishing. My Bow Warrior Monks are veterans. They are not 200 range, but they do have fully upgraded accuracy and reload. And one of them has whistling arrows, I believe, as well, even though I think I forget to use those in this battle, which was kind of stupid. So yeah, and then my sword component is made up of 2 longsword units, just because I needed a little bit of numbers. So I've got my 2 longsword units, 1 on each flank. These guys are pretty vetted up, but then the core of my melee is these 2 katana samurai units. I like bringing these guys as their morale is stronger, and they can grind it out for quite a long time in a melee fight. So that is my army, and then of course we got old Patchter here. Showing off his Uesegi Kenshin armor. So let's go take a look at my opponent's army. This match is quite tactical and begins with quite a long standoff, so I'm going to go ahead and place it into fast forward while I'm looking around. So you can see here that he has 4 Bow Warrior Monks up front, so I was partially right, at least about my guessing. You can see 1 matchlock unit clearly here, which is a... or hang on, here's his matchlock unit. It's a heavy gunner unit with 9 chevrons, a unit to be feared indeed. He's got a matchlock warrior monk heading this way with 1 chevron, and then he has another matchlock warrior monk unit right here with 0 chevrons. So his matchlock warrior monks are not vetted, but they're a solid matchlock unit, something that you do not want to approach in a frontal assault, especially if it's backed by 4 bow warrior monks. So my opponent does indeed have a very strong skirmishing contingent, as I expected. And then he brought the lone swords and Yari-Ashigaru, as I expected. He's only got 4 lone sword units, though. I find this to be a very large error, as that is not a very large melee component. However, I'm sure he's hoping that I've brought a rush build, which is very typical of me in the past. And had I brought a rush build, this guy, unless he made some big mistakes, would have absolutely destroyed me. He's got enough spears to protect his infantry, and he's got enough matchlock to mow down my cav. However, the one thing you will not notice in his setup is any Great Guard. However, one thing that's smart to do is whenever you start out a battle, you should count your opponent's units. So, I see 4 lone swords, 4 Yari-Ashigaru, that's 8. His general makes 9, heavy gunners makes 10, 2 matchlocks, that makes 12, 4 bow warrior monks, that makes 16. So, most of these being Yari Ashigaru, or Ashigaru units, my opponent could be using the Inspiring Order and the Trading Post, which means that he could easily have enough money left for Great Guard. So at this point, I was not going to be hasty with my Monk Cav. Even though they can do very well in a face-off against Great Guard, you definitely want to choose your battles against Great Guard. You don't want to just take them head-on. You can win sometimes, but I'm not overly confident in that because I haven't upgraded the bonus first cav on my other Monk Cav. Plus, if I were to hastily charge across the river, I could find myself not only facing Great Guard, but also facing enemy skirmishing fire and enemy spears. So I was definitely tempted to run around to the other side of the river and try and force my opponent into cross. But the name of the game is patience when you're playing a skirmishing army, and you must have patience. There is an armor building here. This is the workshop. I do not intend to capture it. It would definitely be helpful in a prolonged skirmish fight. I will attempt to keep my opponent from taking it, but there may not be much that I can do about this. So the match is very strategic, this one, because there is a river crossing involved, and neither of us is going to want to commit to that river crossing. We have equal bow strength, except that I have more numbers, and my opponent has the extra matchlock units, which means that his missile contingent is indeed stronger than mine. If I were able to take down his bows, but not his matchlocks, then indeed, if I charged his armies, I would die, especially with his heavy gunner in place, and then the 2 matchlock warrior monks. So it's not enough for me to hope to just take out his bows. In fact, I'm not even super concerned about his bows. What I want to take out is his matchlock units. The strength of an army like this lies in the matchlock. Now, the warrior monks, the bow warrior monks, definitely will make an effect on the battle, absolutely. They can make a lot of kills. However, if you rush into position and force them back, they're not quite as dangerous as matchlock in the short run. Over the long run, they can cause an exceeding amount of damage to your units. You can see my opponent here going for the armor dojo, or the workshop with his Great Guard, and you're going to see my army push forward and force him off of that. I don't want to just give it to him. However, I'm not necessarily sure that I'm willing to start a huge fight over just the armor workshop, even though it does concern me since I'm about to start a melee fight. Or, I mean, a prolonged skirmish fight in most certain... I say most certainly about to start one. Sorry, I got tied up in my words. And I also don't know if my opponent has a second Great Guard unit, so I definitely want to be careful about how I approach this. I'm going to put it in the slightly slower fast forward for just a moment. This is one place that your opponent can hide Cav from the beginning of this. He can hide him just in the edge of this forest at the start. He can also hide them here, and he can also hide them in this forest in the back, which gives access to several points on the map. You can see that you could sneak all the way over to here, and you could also sneak all the way over to here. So, my opponent starts to move his Great Guard for the crossing. I do not know if he has 2 across there, but I am going to go ahead and challenge him for that crossing, and he decides not to take it. At this point, it's really impossible for me to tell if he has another Great Guard unit in this forest, just due to the fact that, you know, his actions don't necessarily give it away, and he hasn't exposed it yet if he does have it. And of course, with this heavy gunner setup, I would be an insane fool to charge my cav into these heavy gunners. You will never reach them intact. They will mow down your entire cav unit. So here, my opponent begins to make some movement across the river. Now, what I want to do is I want to get the skirmishing advantage. I want to get some devastating first blows, and I'm going to test my opponent's skirmishing ability in this map. I am not a pro at skirmishing. I do know the fundamentals. I do not practice it much, so I'm not necessarily very strong at it. But again, I have heard the fundamentals and seen the fundamentals from both players who have beaten me and from other people who make videos. So I have been beaten a number of times by opponents who can skirmish in a very superior manner to my abilities. So we're getting things started here. I see his army move into this river area, and this is an opportunity for me to move up and possibly take advantage of my opponent's army while he's bottlenecked. As he's bottlenecked, it will allow me to have a little bit more skirmishing power. So I move my spears over here with my 2 monk cav in case he had a second Great Guard that he wanted to start racing across. I do not want to allow him to cross the river with his Great Guard and start to harass me. Even though it would be kind of nice to lure his cav over here, they could become a distraction that allows his army and matchlocks to move forward. And I need to take down his matchlock. So what I do is, you're seeing me here move a meat shield first. My opponent left his bows on fire at will. without selecting targets. That was a massive mistake, because they are now targeting my Yari Ashigaru, which is an expendable unit. With my retainers in play, this unit only costs 297 koku. All the while, I'm absolutely slaughtering this 750 koku, I think it's 750 koku Matchlock Warrior Monk. So you can see that these guys are absolutely ruined. Already I've targeted all 5 of my bows on it. So this is one way to get rid of Matchlock, is with concentrated bow fire. I'm now going to turn my attention to the other Matchlock Warrior Monk unit that is in range. My bows do not have quite as good an angle on it because of this little hill here, but I'm going to unleash some flaming arrows and just really pour in some fire on these guys and take them out. My opponent should be retreating at this point, and also making sure that his archers are targeted onto my archers. You will see, however, though, that his archers are not targeted on my archers. They are targeted on this Ashigaru unit, and my archers are taking few, if any, casualties, which is allowing me to completely destroy his Matchlock, but not only that, to have enough men and ammo remaining to challenge his Bow Warrior Monks for archer supremacy. My opponent keeps his Bow Warrior Monks in tight formation in order to improve their accuracy, but at this point I've destroyed his 2 forward Matchlock units, and I'm going to start unleashing all my bow volleys onto his Bow Monk units. This Matchlock unit, well, I say that, this one's only down to half strength. I go ahead and finish this Matchlock unit off, or at least get it down to a point where it's wavering. At that point, they won't be able to come close enough to your lines to really cause any damage, nor will they have enough men left to cause any significant damage. So my opponent brought a skirmishing army, but he made some very critical skirmishing mistakes here. He used his bow monks improperly. He placed his matchlocks ahead of his bow monks, assuming that I would be willing to charge my infantry into them. Rather, the only thing I charged into them was a whole lot of arrows. So he definitely made a mistake there. So at this point you can see me targeting his bow monks, and again I am focus firing all of my bows on one unit at a time, which is knocking them out of the fight extremely fast. He has now turned some of his archer attention to my archers, but at this point I have gained a decisive archer superiority. You can see that he's got 1 unit of ruined archers and he's lost 2 units of matchlocks. I have not lost a single unit, no, I haven't lost a single unit of archers yet. Just 2 Yari Ashigaru. I don't believe I've lost a unit of archers. No, I haven't at this point. So again, I'm going to focus fire at certain units of his Bow Warrior Monks to take them out of the fight. Right now I'm focusing on this one. So you can see that my all-in-one swift blow, basically within a minute or two, my opponent lost all of his skirmishing strength, with the exception of his heavy gunners. They are the sole exception. Now my Bow Warrior Monks have increased ammo. My Bow Samurai do not. However, the Bow Samurai fire slow enough that they do not burn through their ammo at near the speed that veteran Bow Warrior Monks will. So I'm now targeting this this last unit of Bow Warrior Monks that has significant numbers. Actually, he does have 1 more unit out here. He's got 71 left. I did go ahead and pull back, it looks like, at the moment, because my opponent was probably threatening me with his infantry. I can't allow my my newly gained missile supremacy to be taken away by my opponent. So here's my plan at this point. When I see the missile supremacy that I have, my plan is to knock out his remaining bows, and then fire all of my remaining missiles into his infantry, and if at all possible, get some shots into his heavy gunners, which have taken to hiding at the moment because they do not wish to be shot. Very smart by my opponent. To throw away a 9 chevron unit of heavy gunners would be to throw away somewhere in the neighborhood of at least 1,500 koku. And this is also a very expensive unit he has here, his Great Guard unit. You can see he's running them around in wedge. I'm not going to explain how it's done because I don't want it to proliferate, and at the same point I'm not accusing my opponent of it because I don't know if he was going to. But there is a glitch out there that if you take advantage of with a certain cavalry formation, may or may not be the wedge, you can really mess up enemy cav if they charge you at the wrong moment. I will say nothing more of this glitch, as I do not want to proliferate its use, and I think it's rather cheap for players who do so. Again, I am not accusing my opponent of doing it, because at no point during this match does he do it. It's just that I have to be careful in case he was going to do it. So it makes me extremely cautious of how I'm going to engage my cavalry with his own when the time comes. Now, a lot of players just simply run their Great Guard in the wedge because it gives them penetrating power. Again, I'm not going to accuse my opponent of anything prematurely. I'm just letting you, YouTube viewers, know that that is something that you should be aware of. So just be careful. So in any case, my opponent's bows are now duking it out with mine, and I'm just going to move forward and destroy them. He has some infantry to try and threaten my bows with, but I still have a unit of spears. Although he routed a lot of my spears, I still have a unit of them, and I also have my monk cav nearby for support in case he comes in with a cav charge, because cav can obviously outmaneuver spears with their superior speed. So you can see my monk cav moving in the background here. I am going to keep them close by and make sure and ward this Great Guard away. They could quickly ruin my missile supremacy, and I do not wish to have that ruined. So my opponent has this one unit here with 54 men. I'm going to unleash my fire on it and start to take them down. Let's go take a look at the way I'm set up in my skirmishing. I do have 2 of my bow units, 2 bow samurai units still in the back, and I have the rest of my units forward. So I am reserving 2 of my bow units, trying to save a little bit of ammunition with them and keep them in reserve. My opponent continually runs his cavalry forward, trying to find some type of hole, but I'm not going to make it easy for him. My cav again is nearby, and I don't remember if I have a speed upgrade on my monk cav, but it's equally as fast as his Great Guard. So I can keep pace with his Great Guard, and then the war cry would help even out a fight. Although I don't really intend on using the war cry until I have to at the appropriate moment. The war cry really busts the morale of enemy units, and it can cause or help create a quick route for you if used at the most opportune moment. So do not throw away the war cry prematurely in a fight. It's definitely a mistake to do so. So at this point I have pretty much destroyed the enemy missiles. I open fire on his Great Guard, looking to gain a few quick kills. Great Guard is very well armored though, and does not fall quickly to missile fire unless it is matchlock. So you don't want to waste too much ammo on a Great Guard unless the opponent is just blindly offering them to you, or else you will not get much return for the ammunition spent. My opponent still has an equal number of swords as I do, and he also still has his heavy gunners, and he has more spears than I do. Although at the moment, since he hasn't revealed any more Great Guard, it would appear I have a cavalry advantage. But Great Guard, again, is not to be underestimated. If he gets a charge off on one of my sword units, he could very well destroy them, leaving me at an infantry disadvantage, and so I'm definitely trying to guard my sword units that are in this vicinity. And you can see him definitely making threatening move towards them, though I would rather him charge my katana samurai than a lone sword unit, because he could very well rout a lone sword unit on contact. So I ward his cav off. He sends a unit of swords all the way forward, which was probably not the best idea. I decide to let them retreat though, as I'm going to pick my battles very carefully here. I want to pull him back and expose him to bow fire. I do not think he's actually willing to engage here, and so that's why I'm going to just unleash a lot of bow fire on him while his men are sitting here. I do have some of my units off of fire at will though, so that I wouldn't want to expend all my ammo on these targets that I do not consider to be a very high priority. See here, he takes a charge towards my lone swords. I quickly react with my spears and my own cav. At least I thought I reacted quickly with my own cav. Apparently I did not. And here I'm going to chase his Great Guard out of here with missile fire. They have lost 10 men, so they're not going to want to stick around, and nor is his infantry. This is a very prolonged, very strategic battle. My opponent came into this battle with a plan of playing very defensively and hoping that I would be a rush player. And indeed, the army that he's chosen works very well against someone who rushes without too much thinking. I have to admit that in the early days of Shogun 2, I loved rushing. It was so much fun to bring a lot of swords and a bunch of katana cav and just totally catch your opponent off guard in a massive, sudden attack. That won't work very often anymore, especially with heavy gunners on the field. But veteran matchlock units, even without heavy gunners, can destroy an incoming rush. You've seen me fall victim several times to different armies in my videos where I rush someone prematurely, and I bring a rush army against an army that's very well capable of countering one. So a rush tactic is very effective whenever matchlock is not present, but if your opponent brings a fairly balanced army, it can definitely ward off a rush attack. But with the matchlock present, like I said, it can be a big problem. If I didn't bring any bow units, my opponent would have been able to deliver a massive amount of pain to me through his matchlocks and his heavy gunners. My army would not have survived, regardless of whether I was meat shielding. I have tried rushing people before who use armies like this, and as long as they're good players, it fails miserably. So in any case, I'm continuing the skirmish with my opponent. You can see that it's going to be a long drawn-out affair. I'm not in any hurry. I have a bow advantage, and I'm going to expel my missiles in the way that I best see fit. And at this point, that is by attacking some of his lone sword units. If I can start to diminish his infantry, it may force him into an attack that puts him in a bad position, and if he does not attack, it will simply allow me to mow down a great deal of his melee infantry, and so when the time does come for a battle, these lone swords, having taken heavy losses prior to the battle, will not fare well. If you had a tougher unit, such as a katana samurai, it's possible they might stick in the fight, but you do not want to let bow units take a great deal of damage, or I mean, you don't want to let sword units take a great deal of damage before the fight, as numbers definitely play a big game into a melee fight, or especially when it's like a long, grind-out fight. Now check out these guys just getting mowed over. This guy's got an arrow through his arm, and he's probably going to end up drowning here in the stream. My opponent definitely should have pulled out of the stream, and he should have manually targeted his bow warrior monks at my archers. At that point, I would have destroyed his matchlocks, but he quite likely could have, not necessarily would have, but could have won the bow fight. At the same time, I would have been willing to sacrifice my bows in order to remove some of his matchlock units, as I wasn't as worried about his bows. And some of you might be saying, Air, well, how come you're not shooting at his heavy gunners? Well, don't be afraid. Air has a plan for his heavy gunners. I have a plan indeed. So for now, I'm going to expend my my archer ammunition onto his longsword. You can see these guys are all the way down to 102 men. You can see that there's a large number of dead men laying in the stream. This has been quite the killing ground for my bow warrior monks, who are racking up quite a number of kills. And my bow samurai also racked up a respectable number of kills. That's pretty cool. That guy's got an arrow right through him. I love the graphics on this game. It's absolutely beautiful. So yeah, this fight is definitely extremely long. So, but I want to show you most of it, just so you can get an idea of how to properly use a skirmish army, and one way to fight against a heavy skirmish army. Again, I figured my opponent would bring a heavy skirmish army. If he did not, my army was still semi-balanced. It would have definitely been infantry weak and a little bit cav weak, because I would have been focused on my missiles, but it was semi-balanced. My veteran units of Monk Cav are quite capable, and when supported in near proximity to Yari Ashigaru, they can be very powerful indeed. So some of my bow units have used up all their ammunition. I'm going to pull them back, and my bow warrior monks still have ammunition, so I'm going to move them forward. So here they are moving forward. These are my whistling pain rain. This is probably my best bow warrior monk vet unit, but I mean, it's not as good as some people's. It doesn't have the 200 range and missile damage and stuff like that either. So I mean, it's a good unit, but it's definitely not one of the best bow warrior monks you're going to see online. I'm pretty hesitant to put more upgrades on these guys, even though I want to, just because they're so expensive. So here I'm going to lay down the flaming pain. I do believe they have whistling arrows, and I totally forgot about it the whole time. Actually, I may have deleted the bow monk. I accidentally put whistling arrows on. I don't remember. I could have just named these guys Whistling Pain Rain just because it sounded kind of cool. So here you can see me just absolutely mowing down this longsword unit. It's down to under 100 men now. And with that many losses, this longsword unit is going to definitely be affected on morale. They may not be while they're standing next to their general, but as they approach my army, they would immediately fall into the yellow. So you can see that he's got this unit of longsword with 87, this unit with 90. He's taken 4 losses in that longsword unit and no losses in this one. So I'm going to sit here and just pluck away at his longsword units. My opponent is pretty much powerless against this. I, at this point, do not believe that he has a second Great Guard unit, because he has not exposed it yet in an attempt to get rid of my archers. He could just be very patient, though, so I'm not going to get too overly excited, because if I did charge him and he did have another Great Guard unit here, he could possibly thwart my army, at the same time make it difficult for me to do anything about his heavy gunners, and I could still very well lose the fight. If you look at the balance of power, my opponent is still in this game according to the balance of power. I'm not sure. I mean, a heavy gunner unit might be able to push that thing past half. I'm just kidding. No, so I'm going to unleash even more fire on his men here. This unit's all the way down to 73, and so on and so on. This is going to continue for quite a while. Again, when you're skirmishing, you have to be patient. You have to play the game right. When you bring a skirmish-heavy army, don't get too hasty. If you win an initial skirmish fight, take advantage. And if your opponent plays defensive like my opponent's doing, make him pay for it. Unleash volley after volley into his infantry, and if he doesn't want to attack you, then just whittle him down, because you have to remember that part of the sacrifice you made in bringing a missile-heavy army is the fact that you spent less money on melee units. So here, as he puts his units into loose formation and spreads them out, I'm going to target the units that he does not have in loose formation. I'm not going to just sit there and leave my archers on fire at will. I'm going to target them specifically where I want the damage to be caused. That was the mistake that my opponent made in the beginning. He brought a very tough army. If he would have targeted his archers correctly, this would have been a very different and much harder fought game for me. But at this point, it's definitely in my favor. However, like I said, the game is not over yet. My opponent still has opportunities to even things out. But if he continues to be this If he continues to be this defensive, then I think it will go poorly for him. You can see his men here just getting chopped down. Look at this guy, arrow right through the neck, and then one in his leg too. Absolutely brutal, the carnage that's going on. So I think that I ran out of ammunition with that bow unit, and I'm going to move up my next bow unit that has ammunition left, and I'm going to start unleashing it until it's out of ammunition as well. This is my Shinto Patchy Bows. Not real fond of that name, but it's okay. And I haven't colored these guys yet. I need to fix them on the coloring. I really like the monk skins whenever they have like the gold color, like one of my cav units here. Well, this one with the red and gold is kind of cool, but I definitely like this one here with the gold robes and the red in the center. I think it looks pretty good on them. I kind of need to change it. It almost looks yellow, but it should be kind of gold. And I think one of my samurai units has that gold coloring to it. I definitely like the gold coloring. Not sure why. My opponent's using these depleted bow units as an attempt to try and to basically mess up my archer fire, but I'm not going to let that happen. I charge for my Yari Ashigari. These guys have a massive 1 melee attack. I am using Renyo's teachings here, and I did that because I want my army morale to be high. It does take away 2 melee attack from me, and it also takes away 10 reload speed from my bows. So my opponent definitely could have gained some advantage had he targeted his bows properly in the beginning. There are drawbacks to Renyo's teaching. Now, some people say that they're easily worth it. I don't necessarily agree, because it makes your spear units like these Yari Ashigaru pretty much worthless. I mean, they can't do any damage to an infantry unit. Yes, they can still fight off cav, but they do horrible against an infantry unit. Not that they do great in the first place, but they're even worse. So it's definitely a fair trade-off in my opinion. Now, if you start using like tons of the Eco-Iki retainers, it can get pretty insane. But I only have that one retainer, the Renyo's teachings, just because I did want to boost the morale of my army. Since I'm bringing fewer infantry, I need their morale to stay higher so that I can keep them in the fight longer while my missiles do the work. So that's part of the reason. It may seem counterintuitive to bring a retainer that takes away some of your missile superiority, but it's not counterintuitive if used properly. So at this point, my opponent and I are in another stalemate. I realized that this unit of Lone Swords was hidden, so I just left it there, hoping that maybe he forgot about it. I don't necessarily assume that he has, but I'm going to leave these guys hidden there. And this is my my Lone Sword here. They're called EDLC. If anybody knows what that means, I'll be proud of you. And I might consider giving you a job with me. Okay, no, just kidding. I can't do that. But I would definitely be proud of you if you know what that means. So I'm kind of thinking about how I want to approach my opponent. I am out of ammunition. I do not, however, want to just charge headlong into these heavy gunners, which I'm sure surprisingly don't have the increased range. That's one of the things that blows my mind. The range is only 125. He may have put rapid volley on them instead and some other upgrades, but I could not believe that these guys did not have the increased range, which would make them 150 and make them much more dangerous to myself. But I'm kind of glad they don't, to be quite honest. I don't want them to have any further range than they do. And look at the carnage here across the stream. That's quite a lot. So I'm definitely considering how it is that I might want to attack my opponent. I go ahead and move my my warrior monk cab up into this forest. I want to try and tempt his Great Guard forward, or if he has another unit of Great Guard, I'm just wanting to tempt them out of hiding, tempt them forward, see if I can take out his cav. If I could take out his cav, it would allow my monk cav free reign as infantry, and I've even considered taking a charge right down the center and hitting these Lone Sword units. These depleted Lone Sword units, if hit by my monk cav with the war cry ability on, they would rout almost instantly, and so that's something else that I've considered. But he does have spears semi-nearby, and so it might be folly for me to do that, as well as if he does get some volleys off with his heavy gunners, that would leave me in extremely bad shape. Now, he did move his heavy gunners further down closer to the front, and I'm thinking of what I might be able to do to take advantage of that. He can easily retreat those guys if the battle starts. So yeah, at this point I'm definitely thinking and just considering my options. Not really sure how I want to take this. I've done well so far, and the reason I'm being patient, now some of you might be, you're like camping there. No, I'm not camping, I'm thinking. I've definitely played, I've played more defensive than I'm used to, but I'm also being aggressive in the fact that I moved forward and took after my opponent's troops. Now, here was the plan that I had for his heavy gunners, and I decided this was the time to do something. This is my ride-by Patchies, my bow cav. I think one of you all suggested that name. I ended up picking it finally, and these guys also have the kind of cool gold color scheme. I've pulled them up. I do not have them on fire at will. Again, I want to shoot, or actually I do have them on fire at will. the moment, which is a mistake, because when you target bow cav, if they have fire at will on, they'll actually just go ahead and fire at the unit of their choosing. So you can see that's what they're doing, and they're actually going to waste a couple of volleys on infantry. But don't be fooled, bow cav has an enormous amount of ammunition, especially since I've given these guys extra ammunition. So they will be able to put down a lot of fire for a long time. And if your units stand still, the bow cav can cause some nice damage. If your units are mobile, the bow cav will do very little. So bow cav has to be used properly for it to be effective, as far as skirmishing wise. And don't expect it to come out and just get like hundreds of kills. It can be effective, but it has to be used right. So at this point, I make sure that I'm targeting the right area, at least I believe I have. We'll watch my arrows to see. I believe I'm trying to target his heavy gunners, but I'm also trying to make sure that I don't come within range of them. Yeah, here comes a volley. I am indeed targeting his heavy gunners. I have achieved 5 kills thus far. My opponent should be running these guys away. And there he goes. He is going to run them away. And I am going to follow these guys a bit and go ahead and continue to lay down fire. I got 3 more of them there. You can see they are vulnerable to missile fire because bow cav does not kill at a high rate. So if they're getting the kills that they are, you can imagine what bow warrior monks would do to those guys. So if you bring heavy gunners, it's best to hide them and spring them at the right moment, or to keep them in the very back of your army and keep them safe from enemy missiles, as they can be quickly and easily destroyed. So now that I have a whole other unit full of ammunition, you guys may be bored with this by now, and to be quite frank, I was a little bored with it too when I was playing it. This is not the way that I like to play, but it can be extremely effective, and sometimes this is the best way to play against this type of army. So here, I do have it in fast forward. You're going to see my bow cav firing at some of his lone swords. I'm going to wreak some damage on these guys. I'm not doing it too quickly. I'm definitely thinking about where I'm going to place my arrows, and I don't want to use all my arrows either because I do want to save some pain to unleash on his heavy gunners. But you are going to see my bow cav go ahead and tighten up, and I'm going to start opening fire on this lone sword unit here, and I'm going to start causing quite a lot of damage to it. I think I just dropped about 10 or 15 men. This is going to cause my opponent to charge some of his infantry along with his great guard forward. So here I go ahead, he's coming after, he's trying to block my monk cav and allow his great guard a shot at some of my units, which he does, and manages to do quite effectively, but I still do have the spear unit. And he's coming out over here after these archers for some reason, which is a complete waste. They're out of ammo. My opponent should have never charged these guys, and here, indeed, my Yashigaru catched them. I charged the archers forward, and then I charged this lone sword that was hiding in the wood, and I just straight up ambush these great guard and try and pin them down and take care of business. Now my Yashigaru have extremely low attack, but they do still have the 20 bonus versus cav, so they're going to score a number of kills. And I charge a sword unit forward to quickly knock out these 2 infantry units that he used for support. So I'm going to make my opponent pay for coming up piecemeal. He is moving up his heavy gunners though, so I do not want to allow my men to move forward. I'm going to immediately retreat. And you'll notice that I've chosen the place for my general and my bow cav near this hill that I can use for cover from his heavy gunners. They do take a volley, and they kill a few of my men, I think, but nothing very significant due to the range and the terrain difference. The terrain difference definitely makes a difference in how well the matchlock hit their targets. So here I've got my bow cav. They're going to come back up front. I'm going to try and take some more shots at his heavy gunners while they're up here, but I do have to retreat because of his incoming sword units. Look how badly his infantry is beat up before he's even engaged me. That's how you know that you've properly skirmished your opponent, is whenever their infantry comes up in tatters to face your army, which is what you need because, again, I do not have a large infantry component. It is very high in quality, but very few in numbers. So at this point, my opponent is getting desperate. You can see he's going to come up. He's got these guys on fire at will, probably because he's firing at these depleted bow units over here. He should not be wasting his volleys towards those units. And so here comes my bow cav fire again. You can see I'm going to clean up a few more of these guys. I've now killed almost 15 of them. And it doesn't take many heavy gunners, though, to be extraordinarily effective. But at this point, these guys are definitely being whittled down to a point of lesser effectiveness. They're now down to 36 men, so they're down almost 20 men now. It's kind of cool. They're like bunny hopping into position. I'm just going to let my bow cav continue to try and go at these guys. There does seem to be some weird firing issues every now with my bow cav. I have to reissue the orders. Not sure what that's about. So this is the way I like to see heavy gunners, laying on the ground with arrows pierced through their body. So these guys have now been made to be slightly less worthwhile. At this point, I'm not nearly as scared of them. So I'm going to allow my vocab to stand and fight here. So you can see that even with only a few men, look at the damage that these heavy gunners rack up. You can see my general, though, is made safe by staying slightly behind this rise. I do believe he may have taken a casualty or two earlier. But just listen to that penetrating power of the heavy gunners. You can see, again, most of the shots are going wide over the top of the remainder of my men. And I'm just using this opportunity to try and continue to take shots at these heavy gunners and keep them busy. My vocab is now less than effective, though, and I'm okay with starting an infantry fight at this point. So here I'm going to charge my lone swords out of the woods. I'm going to use my archers as melee units. That's going to put added numbers against my opponent. Look at my katana samurai. They're going to just devastate this Yari unit right off the bat. Here comes my other units. You can see that his sword units are faltering extremely fast versus my own. I come out here, I slip the war cry off on his sword units, and then I'm going to quickly slip around those units that have now already routed. You can see how quickly the war cry played against those Ashigaru units, and I'm going to slam into his heavy gunners, which are now out of business. My opponent's army at this point is now in complete and total shambles, and I'm able to finish him off at my leisure. So the name of this game was Patience and Strategy. I had to think about when to attack, how to attack. I used the meat shield with my bows. I manually targeted my bows. I did not allow them to fire at will. I made sure to prioritize their targets, so I prioritized from matchlock to bows and then further onto his heavy gunners. I saved my last bow cav unit for the last moment when it would become strategically advantageous in what would have otherwise been a standoff where I would have had to charge into his heavy gunners. So sometimes it is best to keep a reserve and keep it hidden. So I hope you all enjoyed this battle. I know it was very long, but it's been a while since I've posted an online battle, so I thought that you might enjoy that. Also, I don't often post skirmish heavy battles, so I hope this teaches you something. I am not the best skirmishing player out there. There's lots of other commentators you can go watch for more skirmishing tips. And if you want some of those tips, then I guess what I could do is either link you up to some channels for people who do like to skirmish, or I could ask around and try and get some more skirmishing videos to teach you more about effective skirmishing tactics. Anyway, Heir of Carthage signing off from now. Stay tuned for the results screen, and you're going to be pretty amazed at how many kills some of my bow warrior monks got. Oh, by the way, I think I forgot to mention, good game to my opponent. He did make some mistakes, but good game to my opponent. He brought a tough army. It's a very common army online. I say very common. Most people don't typically bring quite so many bow units. They'll have a few more lone swords. But good game to him. I have nothing against Clan Long or any member of Clan Long, so whenever I was talking about what I expected, I did not mean it in any negative type of connotation. It's just simply what I had come to expect from having played some other people. Good game to him, and yep, I guess that's it. Now I'll put the results screen up.